All right, welcome to part 2 of our pop-up series. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to create a pop-up using 2 different trapeziums that we're going to be cutting out of our card. Now, let's have a look at what our final thing is going to look somewhat like. If I switch across to my video, you can see that we've got our card here. I'm just going to make sure that I'm showing this on screen. Yep. And so here we've got our frog inside our card, and you can see that it has a nice opening and closing. So it's a little bit different to the one we did previously with our triangles, because we're able to get the frog's mouth to look a little bit more three-dimensional. Previously it looked a little bit more like a beak. This one has a little bit more width to it, so it looks a little bit more like a frog. And you can also see, if I unfold it, that I've also added in the mouth behind it. So you can add in behind your frog the mouth to make it look even more three-dimensional with your card. Now you might like to do a rabbit again, you might like to do a cat or a monster or any kind of thing that you like. You can go to town on this. But before we get to this semi-finished pop-up card, we'll need to start by actually looking at how to create this part of the contraption. Now you might already have figured it out just by having a look, and if you have, that's great, you can go ahead. But I'm going to go through and work on being able to show you how to build this very accurately using trapeziums to be able to make sure that you get a really nice looking three-dimensional frog or cat or whatever it is that you want. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. If I come back to our top-down view, you'll need your pencil, you'll need your ruler, and you'll need a pair of scissors later. I noticed on the last video that the desk was white, and so what I've done is added a little bit of a green backing, so it should hopefully make things a little bit clearer. All right, so the first things first, we're going to go through exactly the same process, almost for most of the way through. We're going to fold up our piece of paper so that it is exactly half, and make sure you get that nice fold. Now press gently but firmly and slide outwards slightly so that you get a really nice, firm, and let's say rectangular line down the center, and the corners line up. I'm going to turn the card sideways, and I'm going to do the same thing again, pressing flat and giving it a nice point there. All right, so what we have is our card, and we can open that back up again. Now remember how we found the middle point? We had to make sure that we get our card and put a little line there and a little line there. And remember that is on the inside. So if I come back here, you can see the lines are on the inside. We're then going to rule down the middle again, and I'm going to do this very dark, but remember you can do it very lightly so that it doesn't end up coming out ridiculously dark. But I'm just doing it down the middle very darkly so you can see what it is that I'm doing. So I'm going to rule that, and you can see I've got my center line there. Make sure that your line really ends up on that center fold and ends up on the center of that fold right at the bottom there. That's super important. Now if you remember from last week, we are going to measure in 7.5 centimeters. And I'll just move the camera a little bit closer, so I'll zoom in slightly so you can see this a little bit better. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to measure 7.5 centimeters. Here's my 7.5. And I've got my 0 right on the edge of the page. That's super important, so make sure your 0 is there. And I'm going 7.5 in. The next super important thing is to make sure that we move all the way to the top of the page here, and we measure 7.5 in again, making sure our ruler is on the 0. Make sure you don't turn your page around when you do this. You've got to make sure that your page stays on exactly the same side so that you're measuring 7.5 from the same edge each time. So I'm going to come up to here, and I'm going to measure 7.5 again. And then I'm going to rule my line down the center, just like we did before, ruling it all the way down. So place my pencil on that mark, letting my ruler tap it, rotating around till it's exactly lined up to the bottom mark. There we go. And then I rule a line through the center. So far we've done exactly the same as we did on our previous card, except this time we're going to measure 3 centimeters high and low on our middle part. So here is our center fold line again. So I'll just turn it back to how we would see it, just so it's very clear. Here's what it will look like. So we've got our center fold here. I'm going to open it back up and turn it sideways. And on our center fold, we're going to measure 3 centimeters in either direction from the middle. Now, to make that a little bit easier, I'm going to put my ruler on the 3 centimeter mark because I'm measuring both ways. And you need to make sure that you put a little notch on the 6 and a little notch on the 0, and then you'll have exactly 3 centimeters on either side. What I'm then going to do is come up to the top, and this is why measuring that middle line is so important. I'm going to come up to the top of the page here, or to the side of the page, depending on your perspective. And I'm going to measure 3 again, so 0 and 6. I'm going to come down to the bottom of the page, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So this is where things are different from our previous card. What we're doing is we're actually measuring all the way across. We're actually measuring a parallelogram. So what we're doing here is we're going to make sure that we are measuring, or I'm going to put my pencil there, rotate around, make sure that's exactly, it's got to be really accurate. So no inaccuracy, please. Place pencil, rotate around, push down, there we go. So now we've got some parallelograms going through our paper. What we are now going to do is also measure 3 centimeters from the center fold, and we're going to make a rectangle. So 3 centimeters. Well, I say we're going to make a rectangle. We're going to make the points of a rectangle, but we're not actually going to draw the rectangle because we're going to make a trapezium. So 3. Remember, I'm doing it at 0 and 3 and 6. Now make sure you don't rule these. Stay away from ruling them, because in the middle, we're going to make this a 5 centimeter line. So we're going to measure 5 from the center and go to 0, and then double 5 is 10. So now we've got our ruler. And you can see that if I draw lines from here to here and here to here, and here to here to here to here, we've got 2 trapeziums that are actually reflecting one another. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to rule these out. Remember, pencil on the point and then rotate around to the line. Make sure it's exactly hitting that line. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Rule around. And the same thing over here. Center that right there. And rule exactly to where those 2 lines meet. And then back here. There we go. So now we've got our trapezium, and it's equal on both sides. 3 centimeters, 3 centimeters, and 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters. And because we ruled that so well, it's even. And this is going to really help us. Now, it's very, very important, this next part. I'm just going to take this out a little bit more. Whoops, back there. There we go, like that. Make sure for this next part that you aren't folding it back under. Whatever you do, don't fold it back under, because that will be disastrous. You want to make sure that it's unfolded. Now, you can draw in your frog at this point. I'm just going to do a little quick example. Like so. And we'll just put in some eyes, nose, and I'll put in some little legs and leg, and we're going to put in some little arms. Like that. And I'm going to put it on a lily pad. There we go. So there's our frog on the lily pad. So if you want to, you can draw it, you can color it in at this point, but make sure that your page is unfolded so that it is completely unfolded when you do it. You may get tempted to want to fold it up and look at it like a card, but you've got to remember to unfold it again so that it is flat like this, so that when you go to cut it, which is the next step, you're going to make sure that you don't accidentally cut this area up here if you have it folded over. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to fold it back on itself, so the other way, and make sure that you have it folded so that it hits that center line. Nothing worse than having it folded in a different way going backwards than you did going forward, and it's possible for that to happen. So there we go. I folded it in the center. Double checking. Yep. Nice. Okay, here is where our scissors come in handy. Scissors, yay. We're going to cut, and you've got to be very careful with this bit, cut to that point that you drew. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see it really well. There we go. Okay, so we're going to cut this one to there. We're going to cut this one all the way to the edge there, and we're going to cut this one to this point here. So you've got to be careful with this that you don't go past those points. Otherwise, the trapezium won't be as effective. So cut right up to that point. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to cut again. Cut again. There we go. And cut again. All right. So now we've got our cut card. And we're going to fold it up the same way that we did previously with our little triangular one, but this time we're going to fold it backwards on that line. Make sure that when you fold it, that it gets on that line. So, like that. There we go. See how exactly on the line it is with the fold? And then I'm going to fold it backwards, making sure that it folds back on the same line. It's very easy to accidentally fold it a different direction on that fold forward, like this. So you've got to make sure that it folds in exactly the same line as you did folding it back. And do that a couple of times just to make the paper a little bit creasier. I don't know if that's a word, creasier. Anyway, we'll use it. Here we go. Next one. Fold it backwards on that line so you can see it really clearly. What a lovely fold that is. I'm so proud of my folding. All right, here we go. Folding it forward, making sure that it stays on that fold. Nice. And then we can open it up like this. Now it's kind of hard still to get it to actually fold out the right way. So what we're going to do is fold it back in again, like we did last time. So we're going to fold it back in on itself again. And make sure that we just softly press those parts down, like that. And here's where you might struggle a little bit because we need to press this in, but it's got to go on an angle. So again, we're pressing in. I've got my finger in there like that to give it a little bit of space. And I'm going to press in. Make sure that you press it in not like this. Don't press it in so it's a rectangle. Make sure you press it all the way in so that it gets that whole angle there, and then you can give it a press. I saw some students doing that before. So make sure, again, don't press it in like that and leave it. You've got to press it and make sure it's on the same angle as the edge of that tetrahedron. Wait, trapezium, not tetrahedron, trapezium. And then we can press it a little bit there. Okay, so there we go. Then what we can do is we can open it up. And I'm going to flip it back over again. And that should allow us to get our card looking really nice. Now, like I said, you want to make sure that these lines here are very light so that you can go back and erase them afterwards, because you don't want those to actually end up being really dark. I just did them dark for demonstration purposes. And the cheaty way that you can actually make sure that you get your frog all lined up and so you can draw the mouth inside is to actually go, and if you close your card slightly, and I'll try and do it here so you can see it on the video, you put a little dot just there. So that inside the mouth there's a little dot, and you can do the same on the other side. little dot. And then you want to get in and put a little dot on the edge. So right where that point meets just there. And put a little dot scribble there. And do the same on the bottom. So we're just going to get a little bit of a scribble in on the back of the thing. And what this does is it just very cheaply helps you to actually see the edges of your trapezium. So what I can do now is put a little esophagus in there. And that can actually go beyond the top of the paper because it's always going to be behind it. And I'm going to put a little froggy tongue. So here's my very, very amazing froggy tongue. Like that. And then what I can do, maybe I'll make it sort of shiny for fun. Then what I'm going to do is actually just shade that in. And again, I'm doing this very quickly so that you can see it. But you want to take a little bit more care with this. But as long as you shade past the edges of that trapezium, I nearly said tetrahedron again. Oh no, I said tetrahedron again. Trapezium, you'll be fine. So that when we come back, voila, we have our frog with its little esophagus, little dangly bit. I don't even think frogs have a dangly bit, but anyway, it's fun. And there's this little tongue. So we now got a frog on a lily pad with a mouth. And you can see that it feels a little bit nicer than the previous one that we made because it's not simply a triangle anymore. Ooh, that's quite bright there. It's not simply a triangle anymore, it's actually a trapezium. So it feels a lot nicer than simply having the triangles there. But again, have a go with that and see how you go. I saw some really fantastic creative interpretations of this from students in my class. I had one student who even had a teeth that they'd cut out. So if I come back here, what they did was they cut out their monster with teeth instead of just having it flat. And they also sticky taped a tongue that came over the top here, which I didn't actually teach them at all. They just thought that they'd be very clever and tricky, and they did that, and it looked really effective. So we had a lot of monsters with tongues, and we had a little lucky cat with eyes that were actually on here. So this was part of the face. Rather than having the eyes up here on top, the eyes were on here. And it had a little nose and little pouches for the little cheeks. And it had its lucky cat kind of body. It looked really effective. So have some fun with all the different kinds of designs that you might like to make with this, because it really is a fun way to create some very interesting pop-ups using trapeziums. And that's going to be it for this week. If you have any that you'd like to show me or your teacher, again, love to see your creative interpretations, because that always inspires me. Lots of times my students do things that I'd never imagined doing, and so it's really important that you show your teacher your creativity, and if you're able to show me, then I'd really love to see your work as well. So have fun doing that, and I'll see you in the next video.